To me, this is not just another nation. It is not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as free men. Free men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News. How is everyone doing this morning? My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting over there to my left, your right. Doesn't matter. He's going to be flying in with truth everywhere. It's interesting what I did there. I said the word truth as I clicked the word truth for a hashtag on our Minds account. Speaking of Minds.com, go to Minds.com/ let's see, Real News Hub. Minds is a very interesting sort of alternate Twitter, alternate Parler, alternate whatever these new social media things are. If you want to know everything that Real News is involved in right now, just go to realnewsradio.live. That's realnewsradio.live. You'll see the central landing page for all Real News related things. How is everyone doing this morning? We have a jam-packed show today. Well, now let me take that back a little bit. It's not necessarily jam-packed with a multitude of topics. It's just jam-packed with information. It's jam-packed with information on a single topic. My wife came and blew me a kiss. It's jam-packed with information on a single topic that I've been researching.
Gabby. Bye. Have a good day.
On a single topic that I've been researching for probably about the last week to week and a half. And if you know Mr. Henry at all, as I speak in third person sometimes, or at least this character that I play in this program sometimes, if I've been researching a topic for that long, it means I've really, really been trying to make my mind up about it. And then mind up about that topic is what's going on with this mail-in voting situation, all right? Is Trump trying to influence the election? He's not trying to influence the election. Is he shutting down the United States Postal Service? What are your feelings about it? I just want to tease that a little bit right now as we get into the beginning of this program so you can have these things in the back of your mind. If you want to follow along with where we're going eventually, if you just want to jump to the end, if you want to go to the last page. Remember those books you used to read, Shine, where, you know, make this decision, go to page 66, make that decision, go to page 55.
Oh, yeah, man. I had a Goosebumps book.
Yeah.
That was about a carnival that was really scary, and you had to make decisions, and you jump around the book.
Yeah.
And, you know, after a while, at first I was trying to live through the whole thing and not be eaten by a monster, but then I was trying to find, like, the coolest ending and always backtracking and stuff. Yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to love those books when I was a kid. In fact, I'm pretty sure I traded one for, like, 3 Twinkies one time. Good deal on my part.
I traded a couple for some Pogs one time. Remember Pogs?
Oh, dude, you are crushing me right now, dude, with the throwbacks. Yes, I remember Pogs. I bet no one else does, but we do because we're old.
Because we're old. We should pause on the references, possibly, just so let people know how old we really are. So if you're one of those choose your end result books type thing, and you want to jump to the end of the show notes, you know, go ahead and jump right now. Links is always in the description, show notes description here. Just click on the Evernote link. Hey, let's go ahead and introduce our buddy Shine. Shine, what are you doing, man? How's things over your way this morning?
Well, I'm wringing my hands and I'm shaking. I'm shaking and I'm wringing my hands because I just don't know if I can go on another day wondering about whether or not the post office will work. You know, like every day I think about how much the post office is an integral part of my life and how if I didn't have the post office, there's no way I could live my life.
That's what it's become, man. I'll tell you that.
That's the only thing I'm thinking about right now is just the post office and how much I've thought about it my whole life and how useful it is, you know. That's all I can think about. I mean, like, I have other important stuff going on. Like, I'm supposed to have a big party this week, and a bunch of people are going to come over, and it's going to be really important. But, like, all I can think about is the post office. So that's an update for me. That's my life.
I always drop my letters off on the way out of the DMV because of the efficiency of those two services. I love pairing them together. You know what I mean? Hey, greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. That's right now where we say, hey, what are you up to? How you been? What are you reading right now? What philosophy you're into? What do you need prayer help with? Prayer concerns? What do you need just general help with at all? You need a meal put on your doorstep, that type of thing. Let us know in the show notes sections, or reach out to myself or David in particular, our personal pages or personal direct messages. You can reach out to the Real News direct message, anything you want to do like that. We always get a lot of great information for the show as well on those Real News pages, people just reaching out to us directly. Being that we get a lot to get through with the mail-in stuff, let me just dive into some of these local headlines right now. First local story that we're up here with, and I want to do this pairing in conjunction with the For Good Government stuff, the Nashville property tax increase that we've been working on here. Quick point about that, y'all. I'm telling y'all in all sincerity, the folks that have helped us with this, the folks that have spread word, the folks that have just sat here and listened to me ramble on about this stuff, Sean and I both for possibly the last month or two, sincerely, thank you. As much as I can muster a sincere expression of appreciation, that's what I'm doing right now. We are right on the edge of gathering the 20,000 plus signatures that we need. We're actually thinking that probably going into Monday or Tuesday of next week, we're going to walk these signatures in to put this thing on the ballot for December 5th. I mean, not only did we do it, we did it almost 3 weeks ahead schedule. It's, just incredible stuff. So the amount of effort that you guys have put in to stop this 34% property tax increase, seriously, if we had a clap, little sound button or something like that, I would throw it out there right now. But so we have this property tax situation going on. And then I stumble across this headline here. It's the first local headline today. Nashville Mayor John Cooper crafting a $1.5 billion mass transit expansion. And I'm just thinking to myself, I just don't know how good of an idea this is right now. I just don't know, man. It seems slightly ill-advised. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm putting this out right now because at least the language I'm about to read in here in just a second seems as if it's just something that the Cooper administration is toying around with.
Like when you're thinking to yourself, man, we don't have enough money, so we're going to raise property taxes by 34%. I know what else would help. Spending $1.5 billion on a mass transit expansion. Yeah, that'll help, man. That's why we need this 34% property tax.
You do wonder how those meetings go sometimes, though, right? I mean, you wonder, honestly.
We don't have any money, but we need to spend more money. How do we do it, John?
Right. Just print it, buddy. We can't print, man. You can't print American currency. Well, anyways, Mayor Cooper, he's apparently developing a $1.5 billion plan to expand mass transit across Davidson County that prioritizes dedicated lanes for buses and appears to shy away from building light rail. Now, that was the massive debacle that came the last time there was a mass transit proposal here in Nashville. And I'm telling y'all one more time, I'll tell you again. Part of the reason why I was pushing so hard on this number 4goodgovernment.com, this Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act, is because it does far more than just protect against a property tax increase. It increases aspect of stewardship. It increases aspect of transparency. It increases aspects of land grabs and land giveaways. I mean, it really puts some strictures and restrictions on what Metro government can and cannot do. And more than that, it actually develops a strong base of a coalition of activists, almost, if you will, that are against some of this increased spending going forward. Because last time it was a light rail transit, now it's the property tax increase, and next time, I don't know, we have a bus system. And maybe I'm wrong, but let's finish the story here real quick, all right? The Tennessean reported the details on August 16th of Cooper's draft plan, which his administration continues to vet with government officials and stakeholders before formally presenting a final plan to Metro Council later this year. The Tennessean reports that one centerpiece of the plan is the 13 miles of rapid bus route from Antioch to downtown, as well as new transit center locations in North Nashville and Green Hills. New sidewalks plus roads and bridges are also a part of the plan and currently crafted. Cooper, who's been in office for 11 months, is the latest mayor to attempt to bolster Metro's transit system amid years of surging population growth and job gains across the city and region. Now, I will say, to be totally fair, that part is true. Something needs to be done somewhere. Expansion of roads. Our infrastructure was not necessarily designed to handle the mass influx of families that are moving in Nashville every single day. And I'm one of them. All right. So I'm the guy adding to the problem. Now, I'm not living in Nashville
millions of
Metro.
people are going to ride these buses, Grant. Like millions of people are going to ride buses from Antioch to downtown. Because, like, there's so many people who can afford to ride buses between Antioch and downtown. It's that's not where the growth is, right? Growth is out of county or around the edges, and it definitely ain't in Antioch.
Well, and look, man, I think part of I just bring this story up to say I don't know if now is the time to propose spending another $1.5 billion. Look, Jonathan even said in Facebook, Jonathan, just so y'all don't know, if y'all that don't know, Jonathan's the guy that, I don't know how much I can express like what he does, but suffice it all to say, like, he works, the industry that works in what he does for a living, he knows exactly what he's talking about when it comes to especially state government and local government here in Metro. And he said a second ago, pedestrian is completely in danger in Nashville. He's all for sidewalks and doing something. So everyone realizes something needs to be done here. I just don't know necessarily about what that thing is that needs to be done. If it's another $1.6 billion, $1.5 billion increase. And I also, because last time we tried to do this, the sales tax was going to increase. It was going to make Nashville, going from whatever we were to the highest sales tax city in the nation overnight. That last transit
You mean more
plan
than
was.
New York City?
Right? Hey, Shine, give me about 20 seconds of commentary. I got to close this door. Go ahead.
Well, so once upon a time, I'm just kidding. And Grant's being a little modest here. AFP actually stopped the Metro Transit. They tried in 2014 to add a bunch of light rail lines, and Grant was talking about this sales tax thing. That was what was going to do it. They were going to add all these light rail lines, and it was going to make the sales taxes in Nashville the highest in the country. Like more, how the people in LA are complaining right now about how much their local, state, and federal taxes are. It would have been more than that, but to live in Nashville. And here they are trying to like do something, I guess, a little cheaper, because I think they were running, the other one was going to be around 14 something billion grand, if I remember off the top of my head. It was enough to buy everybody in the metro area a Tesla. It was so much money. Like, you could have just given everybody a $60,000 car. This isn't as bad, but the juxtaposition of I want to spend $1.5 billion and invest in a bus system versus we need 34% more of your property taxes because we're broke. Those two things don't really go together. And to me, too, the main thing, it's like if you're going to ask people, especially people who are disproportionately paying so much because they make more, 34, or their property's worth more, then maybe you should come up with a $1.5 billion service that would make their lives better. Not people who rent. You know what I'm saying? Like, people who rent don't pay property taxes. I mean, they do, kind of. But, like, man, do something for the people that are, if you're going to ask these people that own property to pay 30, the juxtaposition of we're going to build bus lines to Antioch and, hey, everybody, pay 34% more in property taxes. Right. That doesn't seem to go together. Right. Like, maybe on a good year, you're like, maybe it'd be nice if we could increase traffic from Antioch. Let's talk about that. Is everybody willing to pay for it? Let's have that conversation as a community, but having the conversation a month ago that we're broke and we need to expand government by a third, expand your payments by governments by a third, and we're going to build rail lines to Antioch, or not rail lines, bus lines to Antioch. That just doesn't seem to go together to me. And it shows the tone deafness of the Nashville government to me.
Well, and that's what I was, in 2018, obviously then Mayor Megan Barry had her own situation going on, but there was a plan pitched, obviously Shine's talking about a cost, I think it was $9 billion of 15-year construction. Now that vision featured new rails that would go a tunnel under downtown. And voters then, in part because of AFP's actions at that particular time as well, but voters then rejected that plan by a near 2-1 margin. So it was outrageous. And I think the only reason to bring this story up again one more time is just to pitch the ideas. Look, last time you tried to do something, the voters rejected it by 2-1 because you got to pay for it somehow, and people are just not down currently with raising their taxes. If they're certainly not down for this property tax increase, I just don't know if now's the time to pitch it. I will say, though, in a totally alternate vein, so wherever we are currently, jump to the opposite side of that spectrum. Yesterday, Shine, I just want to plug this real quick, in part because it rolls so nicely into what we're about to talk about. But yesterday, if you all did not have a chance to check out what they did down at the Tennessee House, that reenactment of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, if you don't know that story, first of all, Tennessee was the last holdout state. We were state number 36 needed out of 36 states to ratify the 19th Amendment. And at the time, every single southern state was saying, no, we're not going to have a part of that. They had 35 states lined up. So the suffragists basically saw Tennessee as the final holdout state to pass the 19th Amendment. 19th Amendment, obviously, everyone knows, obviously, but it's the right to vote for women. And so the women's suffragists sort of converged on Tennessee all at one particular time. And the War of the Roses started. Yellow roses meant that you were in support of the 19th Amendment, in support of women's right to vote. And red roses meant that you were not in support. And yesterday at the Tennessee State House, they did this reenactment. And I say reenactment, I don't think I think when I say reenactment, Shine, some people think, like, I don't know, country bumpkin reenactment at some house play that they did where they just find some Yoko local actors. Dude, it was a production, man.
With I don't know, there had to have been 15, 20 cameras in there jumping between different shots. There was music, there was paid actors, and then obviously our own Tennessee House members and senators did a great job playing House members and senators. I mean, you didn't have to really be an actor to do that. They did a great job. It felt believable.
It did.
Felt like I was there. It was so awesome. And it was one thing, you gave a little breakdown before we played that on the AFP Tennessee Facebook page. It really brought it to life. And it really hammered home we were the last state, and then it passed in this state by one vote. And came down to the wire and could have easily not happened. And they also mentioned, too, if Tennessee hadn't passed it, there may not have been another state that would have taken it up.
Right.
So, it wasn't a guaranteed thing. We look back at so many of these pivotal moments and say, well, it was just going to happen. That is almost never the case. It's usually the case when you look back at history that it swings on small hinges. The door of history swings on small hinges. One guy changed his vote, and it changed the course of women being able to vote, not just in this state, but I would say generally across the world, it being a widely viewed thing that women are able to be a part of their government as well. And that, seeing how that story took place not far from my home, and affected in my opinion, the whole world, was a really powerful thing. And I hope everybody gets to watch it.
Yeah, man. And Jonathan said in Facebook, the YouTube link may or may not have ironed the kinks out of there. The Facebook link seems to work. But he also said, too, that the close-up shots on the actors that you'll see in that reenactment, that was the production company. But all the other pulled back shots, that's actually the Tennessee state that has those cameras in there, I suppose, if you ever just want to watch what's going on in the house one day. But man, it was just really cool. They had all kind of paid actors. They had the gallery up top filled with people with signs and actors. And it was this really cool playoff between, they had a narrator that would set the stage, and then the stage being set, it would just sort of seamlessly transition into what an actor was during that time in 1920. And he would give his little speech, and then there'd be the rabble-rouser, rah-rah-rah-rah-rah, up from the galleries. And then it'd go back to a narration to set the stage for the next thing that happened. It was really, really nice. Great production. But it caused us to think about the idea of the right to vote. And this is what getting us into the national story right now as we reset for national stories. So get ready, man, because it's going to get long-winded. I'm going to give some opinions, and I don't exactly know where the real news audience is going to fall on this. But being that yesterday was the anniversary of the ratification, not the passing of, but the ratification of the 19th Amendment here in Tennessee, let's finally talk about the mail. And look, this issue has had me quite perplexed for the last few days, if not the last few weeks. You all know how I feel about the great franchise, the right to vote in any democracy for sure, but especially a representative republic. I personally feel that the great franchise, the right to vote, is one of the most ingrained God-given rights that we have. I mean, it is what makes a republic work. It is the definition of a republic. Your right to vote, to have someone else go speak on your behalf, an arbiter, if you will. That is what a republic is. I mean, to take that away, I believe, is something that should have the highest constitutional scrutiny applied to it. I personally believe. I don't know if the Supreme Court agrees with me, but I personally believe that. I actually did a lot of work in this session, this last session around. AFP did. Shine helped us with a lot of this as well, trying to get rights to vote back for several individuals. That's how I felt about this coming into this. You all know how I feel about the authoritative overreach or attempts of restriction or foul play at all. You know how much I hate the idea. I don't use that word very often, but you all know how much I hate the idea of our entire nation losing faith in the results of an election, local or otherwise, but especially a presidential election. I mean, look what happened to us over the last 4 years. Part of the reason right now why some Republicans who have not looked deeper into the research that we're about to go into, part of the reason why they feel like President Trump is justified, if you believe this narrative, is justified in toying around with the election some right now is because they did it to him last time in 2016. So it's a tit for tat. You get what you deserve, precedent been set type thing. We're all on this eggshell situation now currently, where everybody feels like last time we all lost faith in the election because Democrats have been trying to relitigate it for 4 years, and they have. You all know how much I hate the idea about a nation losing faith in the peaceful transition of power. But I have to admit, I've done some research. I've discovered a few things. So let's take a quick trip down some of the research avenues that I did over the last couple of days here, and you all make up your own mind. All right? Let me know in whatever comment section that you're watching this program right now. I have the unified chat going currently. I saw Cody said, what's up? Good morning in YouTube earlier. What's up, Cody? If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you're watching, I'll be able to see the comments. We'll go through this stuff together, and you guys let me know your opinion. Sean, literally any point you want to jump in, bro, give me commentary. But follow along with me, Sean, if you will, in the national stories here. And right underneath that little red section was the rant I just read verbatim almost. Let's start here with a basic rundown of the narrative presented by most mainstream media outlets. And let's dive headlong into the most salacious first. Sean, that first thing there, you can go ahead and click on all these Twitter links as we're going through them if you want. But it says, photo taken in Wisconsin. Now, this happened right before our eyes. I'm pulling this up on my screen. It says, photos taken in Wisconsin. This is happening right before our eyes. They're sabotaging the United States Postal Service to sabotage vote by mail. This is a massive voter suppression and part of their plan to steal the election. And what you're seeing on your screen looks to be, I mean, how else could you interpret this? Now, I know some people are jumping way ahead of me. I get that. We'll get there. Hang on.
Are we sure it's not abstract art?
It was so funny to me. It could be, right?
I think it represents slavery and the system, you know, and racism, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's what all the hard angles are about. I don't know, man. Golly.
Government objects stacked on top of each other. I see it. Burn it with a fire. So that's what you see. And obviously the picture that you're looking at looks as if, you know, it's going to be thrown out. It's going to be put in the rubbish. It's going to be dealt away with. One would be reasonably led to think if all you saw was that picture, that something nefarious is at play. Well, let's go to the next tweet here in the show notes. The next tweet is by the same guy. And you can actually, if you follow along, and it's the same guy tweeting all these things. He just does a great job of I kind of stumbled upon this whole thread, and he just compiles neatly for everybody the entire mainstream media narrative all in one big thread line. Thank God for Thomas Kennedy doing the people's work. Thomas Kennedy.
He's at least doing my work. I'll say that much.
Doing Grant's work. Thank you, Thomas Kennedy.
This made prepping for this morning show that much easier. I was just ping, ping, ping. Here's what he says next. He says to the people saying that there's nothing to worry about. Remember, this is happening. And then he links to...
People are delivering mail. This is happening.
He links to dozens of Montana USPS drop boxes removed. All right, so it's the narrative starting to be, it's starting to build. We have boxes, mailboxes that are a photograph in Wisconsin of a bunch of mailboxes that are what look to be set together as if they're going to be thrown away. Now he links to a story in Montana where it says USPS drop boxes are removed. All right, so the narrative so far is like they were just removing drop boxes all over the place. You can't mail. You're not going to be able to send your mail in. That's what we're getting word of right now. Third story he links here is, while UPS is warning 46 states will experience delays with their mail-in ballots. So now what he's saying is, okay, get this in line. This story's coming from the Washington Post, he says. Legitimate articles he linking. I mean, this guy does a great job for penning this narrative, that is. He does a great job linking to legitimate articles. He's having photographs. He's doing all the things. He's trying to put his evidence together and citing well. He's saying, so at the same time of them removing all these boxes, we also have the USPS currently warning 46 states that are going to experience delays in their mailbox. Now, never mind that the other 4 states that are not going to be experiencing that are probably the 4 states that do solely mail-in voting. So they probably have infrastructure ready. Now I'm getting into my analysis too much, but whatever. He says 46 states. In spite of that, they were taking out boxes in these 46 states when they're already being told that there's going to be delays. So what are you trying to delay it more? Is that what's going on here? Possibly. Let's go on to the next one. He says, so you're experiencing delays. They're removing block boxes. He says, while they removed 671 USB mail sorting machines, which means a reduced capacity to process 21.4 million pieces of mail per hour. Now, somebody at this MSNBC article that linked here, I guess, got together and did the math as to what one piece of sorting machine could put together in an hour and did the calculation. And there's a really juicy headline. That's a juicy headline. I'm not going to lie. And again, I'm trying to be totally vulnerable here. Most of this pitch got me. Let me pause right here. In case my brother's watching or in case somebody else is watching, Shine's on the other end of the call. Shine, did I not, last time we spoke, and I'm getting a little bit too much into it right now, but I just want to give people full disclosure. When Sean and I first spoke about this about a day or two ago, he said, we really need to talk about this mail thing. And I said to Sean, I was like, bro, I just don't know where I stand on it right now. Like, I'm really having a problem with what Trump is doing. I said the same thing to my brother just a few days back. And I have to be honest about that to people that I've spoken to, because now what you're about to see that I'm getting into is that I not only have I shifted opinions on this a little bit, man, it just seems to be one of the more misleading narratives I've ever gotten to. Again, I don't want to get too much into now. I'm just prefacing so Shine can get his response ready in a second, because I have had those conversations with multiple people over the last couple of days. These headlines were, dude, they sold me. All of them sold me. Removed 671 USPS mail sorting machines, which means a reduced capacity to sort through 21.4 million pieces of mail. And then he says, Trump admits this is the next thing linked in this Twitter rant. It says Trump admits this. Link it to a Guardian piece, which Trump did say this. I mean, let's be fair. He did admit what is in that Guardian piece. The Guardian piece, essentially coming down to saying that President Trump openly said he opposes emergency funding for the U.S. Postal Service because he doesn't want to see it used for mail-in voting. Those words were spoken here.
Because he believes it's ripe for fraud.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
not like he thinks that he'll win or lose the election necessarily based on that, at least by his own words. If we're going to use his own words, he's trying to undermine it for vote buying because he doesn't believe in sending out ballots to everyone, that it'll cause trouble for everybody.
And just so you all, fully aware, these are the words that he said on Fox News August 13th. This is an interview that he did with, it doesn't matter. This is the exact quote on Fox News. It says, quote, "They need that money in order to make the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots." And then going on to say, reiterating this idea that, that mail-in voting is rife with fraud. So that's what this guy's talking about. Now, the last thing he tags here is, no, you're not imagining this. Mailboxes are actually being ripped from the ground. That's the last tweet in this whole little chain here. Again, one other thing he posted that I didn't link here is that there's actually some mailboxes that have actual locks put on the front of them as well. So you get the narrative that's being created here, okay? They're removing sorting machines. They're removing boxes. They're doing everything they possibly can. And by they, I don't quite know yet in this
it's the USPS
narrative.
Who else would do it? It would be illegal for anyone else to do it.
No, what I mean though is I don't know in the Democrat pitch if it's exclusively Trump, because the USPS is within the executive branch. So if it's Trump ordering the guy he just placed in there, if it's USPS protocol, if it's local Republicans that are doing this, I don't know who, in that narrative, in that world, who they're pitching as the they is. Most of it seems to be centered on Trump. It's all Trump's idea. Right?
It's Trump in the way that what Barr has done is Trump. It's very similar critique that the Postmaster General is doing the will of the president, Grant. That's the way they're pitching it right now. It's very similar to the Barr language. It just hasn't developed nearly as well, so that's why it's hard to remember. But that's what they're trying to do. It's that this guy's supposed to be doing a service. He's supposed to be serving the country, but all he's doing is the will of the dictator,
Jonathan said, Facebook, are we sure it's not the Postal Service Dropbox repair replacement program? I told you Jonathan was getting ahead, but hold that thought. Hold it like this, Jonathan. Hang on just a second. He says, Jonathan went on to say, I'm vehemently against mail-in voting, so that's probably why he doesn't even care about the situation. John Adams, what's up, buddy? Mr. Adams, the Admiral himself, back at it.
Guy.
What a
guy.
Seriously, man. John Adams was the only reason why Real News is a thing right now is because John Adams took a chance on Real News. He heard a podcast from two random dudes, myself and Shine. He just heard a podcast and said, hey, do you want to do this on the radio? And we said, do you know what we do? And he said, yes, I love it. Go preach it to a couple 100,000 people. John said in Facebook, so John Adams, thank you, man. None of this would be possible without John Adams. I do think he's the epicenter, the spawn point for this whole community. It's all thanks to him taking a chance. John Adams said, Dims have gone postal. We need a little rim shot noise, right? Let's see. So that's John Adams. Kelly said, I'm old. I still pay most of our bills with a check and mail them in for the most part. I've always tried to support the USPS over other companies, just in my opinion, but the post office is still a very vital, essential service. True. I hear you. I totally understand that. And you're starting to get this picture now of what the narrative has been. And I think most people have been following this story. And again, just keep in mind, the reason why I'm stressing so hard is
their friends who are actually Democrats be like, dude, have you heard about this? That's probably happened to you, even if you don't seem to care, because you probably don't. I don't, but
and I'm telling you,
like 4 Democratic friends being like, "This is it, dude. This is the reason you shouldn't vote for Trump. Look what he's doing. Look what he's doing. It's so scary. He's throwing mailboxes away."
Well, I'm telling you, Sean, this is the reason why I'm stressed. I think some people are watching this right now and be like, I did the mail. Come on. No one cares about the mail. But I'm telling y'all, I can read these tea leaves and I'm seeing it being constructed right now. I do believe not the prime, maybe the primary purpose and maybe the sole purpose, but at least one of the major purposes behind this is to delegitimize whatever the outcome is, whatever the outcome might be, delegitimize the vote. And I'm telling you, this is ramping up to be a larger, I don't want to say conspiracy theory yet because it's not for Democrats, but a larger problem than the Russia problem was. This is ramping up to be larger than Russiagate. Mark my words right now, in a few months, and especially after the election, if Donald Trump wins, if President Trump wins re-election, this will be the narrative that they run with for at least the following 6 months, maybe the following year. I'm telling you, it's going to be that big. So it's a pretty good breakdown that we just went through of what some of these theories, as I'm sure you've all heard as well. I started doing some research over the last couple of days because I obviously was one of these people that was buying in and saying, I wanted to call balls and strikes. I didn't like it. I do not like someone messing around with a great franchise. I started doing some research, and much like almost everything you've seen these days, rarely trust, always verify. I know this is a tech security thing and it's not rarely trust, it's never trust, but I'm saying as far as it comes to media, rarely trust, always verify. Please understand this right now. Again, none of what I'm about to go on right now entirely absolves the Trump administration from playing the game of politics. It's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do and what I'm about to say is merely attempting to shed some light on a narrative that may not be entirely accurate. I think that's being nice. So let's start with the very first photo, okay? The very first photo, the one that Jonathan jumped on Facebook here, gave us a comment on, the very first photo that I pulled up of those stack of mailboxes in Wisconsin. Looked like they were all about to be thrown away, right? They were about to be cast aside, thrown away, all part of Trump's plan to sabotage the election. Well, just a few comments down in that same Twitter thread. If you click on that initial tweet, a few comments down, I'm sure you can find one of these inevitable posts as well. It's an article linked to the following article. PolitiFact did a fact check on this. No, PolitiFact says, Wisconsin mailbox picture is not proof of massive voter suppression. So what is it? If your time is short, here's the TLDR. The picture was taken at a place called Hadford Finishing, which has a contract with USPS to refinish or destroy old mailboxes. Has a contract with USPS to do exactly that, refinish or destroy old mailboxes. The picture has nothing to do with voter suppression. The boxes were either removed from little used locations or replaced with new boxes due to their condition. That is a USPS quote. Now, we already went over what Donald Trump said a second ago, and these conspiracy theories have ran the gamut across the board. And I'm honestly starting to suspect that the conspiracy theory itself might be designed to benefit both parties. Democrats get their funding for bailing out states. Democrats get their funding for bailing out state spending, while Trump gets to force Democrats to own the inevitable catastrophe that will be this mail-in voting process. I'm going to do more on this in just a second, but look at the Democrat cities during the primaries already. How many tens of thousands, if you want to compile it across the country, how many tens of millions of mail-in ballots went missing in Democrat primaries already? Trump had nothing to do with that. Let's get back to the Hartford story, though, okay? Hartford Finishing a business since 1986 with about 220 current employees, has a contract with the Postal Service to refurbish old mailboxes. This is exactly what Jonathan jumped to. The business specializes in powder painting systems. Job ads the company posted in 2018 were for positions that specialize in blue Postal Service mailbox. The Postal Service confirms the working relationship. The company did not immediately respond to an email seen comment, but Street View's images from Google Maps show stacks of mailboxes are a regular occurrence there. You can actually click in the show notes if you want to, or follow along for yourself. There's a blue underlined portion where you can actually see year after year photographs taken at this exact location. And the photographs of that exact location are 2 to 3 times the number of mailboxes that were taken today, 2019, 2018, 2017, all the way back into 2014, 2015, 2013. Now, boxes pulled are a part of routine maintenance. Now, the core question, obviously, that PolitiFact was trying to break out here is whether the existence of these boxes at that company proves any kind of voter suppression. That's the heart of the claim that we are checking on today, that PolitiFact was checking on as well. Claims in the vein have surfaced around the country in response to images of other mailboxes stacked on the grounds or flatbed trucks or something. You've seen all this stuff. You've seen a picture the other day of some actress, I forget who it was. There was a picture of a USPS truck on a tow truck because they had a flat tire or I don't know, a engine problem or something, and she said this is an example of voter suppression
because the guy had a red hat on who was driving the tow truck.
Oh, is that right?
That's why she said he had a red hat with white letters. Said a guy with red hat and white. This is literally Trump stealing the election. That's what was her tweet.
So here's the full response. PolitiFact reached out to USPS specifically about this issue of voter suppression by just taking up boxes, by removing them from certain areas, even by shutting down some of these voting sorting machines. The Postal Service said this. This is their quote. This is USPS's quote. The Postal Service reviews collection box density every year on a routine basis to identify redundant, seldom used collection boxes as first-class mail volume continues to decline. Based on the density testing, boxes are identified for potential removal, and notices are placed on boxes to give customers an opportunity to comment before the removal decision is made. Customers can comment if they would like to keep them there before they remove them. This process is one of the many ways the Postal Service makes adjustments to our infrastructure to match our resources to declining mail volumes. The company is failing. Sorry, the service is failing. They're trying to figure out ways to not fail, given the recent.
A lot of people say they're a Blockbuster in a Netflix world, you know.
But just propped up by government money, right? I mean,
right. Well,
yeah.
And you know, Grant, when would you think peak mail was in the United States?
Oh, geez, holiday times maybe. I don't know.
It was 1985.
Oh,
as far as that was peak mail. We are so far from that. And every year, less and less people use it, which means less and less people spend money on it, which means the amount that the taxpayer has been on the hook has increased. Not to mention Congress put a stipulation on the Postal Service that's been crippling them for a long time, saying they have to fully fund pensions for everyone who could ever work at the USPS, not the people who currently work. So most of the congressional money is tied up in pensions. So day-to-day operations, they really rely on people using the services or cutting services to meet the budget. But that's a whole, I know that's part of your next conversation, but I just wanted to throw that out there about peak mail was the year of my birth, and I'm 35 years old. So just letting you know.
Jonathan said a second ago, the head of the USPS has said that they aren't implementing any changes until after the election. That is true. That's a recent update as of Tuesday this week. Kelly just said 2006 USPS was in crisis. That's a pretty long time ago in the grand scheme of things. Pensions, insolvencies was the massive issue then, and Congress was using the USPS as their piggy bank. Add to that the decline in mail and all other stuff going on. And again, one more time, I want to be totally vulnerable. There's a few times in real news history that I've done this. I think the last time that I remember doing this was the net neutrality issue. And by this, I mean being pretty hard solidified on the way that I feel about something, putting a lot of research into it, speaking to a lot of people, and having to shift opinions entirely. Again, I spoke to my brother about this the other day. I spoke to Sean about this the other day. Sean, let's go ahead and do this right now. Was I not, when we spoke the other day, pretty much dead set on the idea that, like, dude, I'm not about Trump trying to influence the election through some of this voter fraud
Grant
stuff.
was
Man,
I'm shaking and I'm wringing my hands right now. I'm wringing my hands and I'm literally shaking right now.
I was upset, man. Like I wasn't about it.
Well, hey, look, man, you saw the commercial, you saw the marketing, you went to the promotional event, so to speak. You heard the side of the story of the people pitching it. And just like a lot of other things in today's Babylon Bee world that we live in, where people are able to just like make up stories, this seems like a problem unless you've been following the Postal Service for over a decade, like a lot of people have since that pension crisis in 2006. I wasn't on the air in 2006, but I was on the air in 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on a major radio station in Knoxville. I interviewed the head of the Post Workers Union in Knoxville. I ran commercials for the Post Workers Union during the time when they were still working it out in 2011 or 12 or whenever it was, when they needed more funding for the post office. They were talking about cutting weekend delivery in 2011. And this was the head of the Obama administration's post office guy. I can't remember his name, but the guy who ran the postmaster general under Obama. They wanted to like cut back hours. They wanted to decrease the amount of people delivering mail. They wanted to get rid of weekend mail delivery, but keep Saturday package delivery. They were doing everything possible because they have to. Because it's part of the executive branch, but it's really, at this point, it's an institution run by Congress because there's so many statute limitations on the governing of how that institution runs. So if there's this amount of money, and they're also statutorily mandated that they provide these certain services to certain places, they just got to start going through and cutting stuff. And that's what they've been doing since 2006.
And that's exactly
every day, all day. They were forced to implement programs where if a route is inefficient, then let's figure out how to maybe take 2 or 3 routes and make them into one route. Or if there's a box that only gets used 5% of the time, and maybe there's 5 other boxes that only get used like 5% of the time, let's get rid of those 5 boxes and put it somewhere where there's actually traffic. Let's put it to. They had to implement all these programs about being more efficient because, like I said, they have a statutory limitation on the money that they need, and then a statutory limitation on the services they have to provide. So they have to make hard cuts sometimes. And then there's a political deal with it too, where they just can't close post offices. Every congressman in Congress would throw a fit if even the post office that nobody goes to in their area, no one goes to it, but they would miss it if it was gone. So you can't even close a post office. You can't get rid of routes. What can you do? Well, you can move boxes. You can get rid of boxes. You can put them in more central locations. It's almost the only thing you can touch based on statutes.
To lend credence to what Sean's saying here, in the show notes, man, follow down there, that next highlighted red portion. I mean, it's serendipitous that we fell on this because Sean obviously knew this next part was coming up, but that's the same thing I stumbled upon in my research as well. So I took this idea and I said, okay, so the narrative is that they're destroying mailboxes, that they're destroying sorting machines, that they're doing this all for some, obviously nefarious purpose. And that's right now, that's what's happening. So I was able to debunk some of that, or at least found information that did debunk some of this. And I don't want to get into confirmation bias here. It's not like I was going out there looking for it. I promise you I wasn't. I was just trying to compile as much information as I could, regardless of which side it was coming from. So we already found a piece of information that says that's not what they're doing. The UPS says that's not what they're doing. Now, okay, so what about back then? Sean, you can see the PDF document that I have linked in the show notes. I stumbled across here's the headline: collection box removal process in the eastern area. It was an audit published by USPS in 2016. This lends even more credence to not only what Shine just said, but to this idea, this stuff that the Republicans are just casually pitching this idea out there right now, that this type of process has been going on for a very, very long time. And we've only started to speak about it right now. That PDF document is the exact publication that came from this audit in 2016. And just to give you a quick breakdown as to what they found from this audit as we're running out of time of the program here, Here's part of what it says. It says nationally, the number of collection boxes declined. This is 2016. Nationally, the number of collection boxes declined by more than 12,000 boxes in the past 5 years. Take 2016, subtract 5 from it. Tell me who was president by then. Nationally, the number of collection boxes declined by more than 12,000 in the last 5 years. Some customers have complained that the Postal Service has gone too far and removed most collection boxes. 2016, they were saying that they removed most collection boxes. So if you want to say in 2016, they removed, this is September, by the way.
And for those of you who can't do the math, the obvious implication is that under President Obama, they got rid of 12,000 collection boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would think that less people are using the mail than they were in 2016, then you're correct. Ding, 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 ding. Which means the USPS is probably getting rid of more boxes per year. Especially since we have all this phone data and Google's tracking everyone and wherever they move. They've probably partnered with Silicon Valley to figure out where the most efficient places to put boxes are.
Yes, man.
I mean, and I don't know that to be true, but like everything else is going that way. And Google is always offering their services to government. So I'm sure they made it because they like the money. Who doesn't like money from the government? It spends just as good. And it does. It spends just as good as anybody's money, you know, because it is everyone's money. But the point is like, if this was happening in 2016, obviously it would be ramping up, not down. It would be only increasing because we used to be fully dependent on mail because when we were at peak mail, there was no internet. Right? In 1985, there was no internet.
Trump's inauguration on January 20th, 2017. This report was published in September of 2016. So we obviously all know what we're talking about here. These stats that I'm reading right now happened under the Obama administration, and it wasn't a problem then. The point I'm pointing to here is this is nothing to absolve Trump of playing politics to win the game currently. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is trying to mitigate some of the ridiculous conspiracy that has been put out by this Democrat-led narrative right now. Okay, so we already just talked about this. 12,000 boxes removed in the past 5 years, 2016 going backwards. Eastern area had 28,670 collection boxes on October 1st, 2014, and removed 533 collection boxes through February 29th of 2016. Reasons for the removals included safety, multiple boxes at one location, and cancels contracts with contract postal units. Other factors management considered for removing boxes included the volume of mail collected, the proximity of other publicly accessible collection points, and the needs of customers within vicinity to that box. There are reasons why the USPS is doing what it's doing right now, and has always done. There's Eastern area collection box removal was not effective, they said. While the area within its 10 districts had established procedures for removing and relocating boxes, they were not consistently followed. Specifically, only 60 of the 6,371 underused businesses and residential collection boxes identified during the 2015 national density test were removed or relocated. Did you all hear what was just said? The USPS in 2015 identified 6,300 plus boxes in one area alone that only had 60 boxes removed. So what the USPS is saying is in 2015 is we wanted to get rid of 6,000 plus. We only got rid of 60. So we basically wanted to, right? We wanted to get rid of, we needed to get rid of 6,000, but because it was inconsistently followed, we only got rid of 60. They're saying our analysis indicated an additional 1,800 collection boxes could have been removed, and another 637 could have been relocated. Again, these service boxes were permanently removed from the streets without Eastern approval or public notification to the customers, which should have been done in 2015. As a result, the Postal Service may be incurring. Here's where it hits all in the head. This is exactly what Shine just said a second ago when he was reporting on this in 2016. It holds up in 2014, 2015, and 2016 as well when this audit was coming through. As a result, this is the Postal Service talking. The Postal Service may be incurring additional costs to collect from and maintain underused collection boxes that could be removed. We estimate removing unnecessary collection boxes through the Eastern area alone would eliminate 73,000 work hours over the next 5 years for an average future cost avoidance of more than $700,000 annually. In addition, relocating underused collection boxes to more visible high-traffic areas and secure locations can better meet the needs of the customer and safely and easily access collection boxes. That was in 2015. Already then, they were saying, we're trying to save money. We're trying to increase our efficiency. We are failing as a service. We are hemorrhaging money. We have to stop the bleeding somewhere. So that was USPS. And lastly, I don't know how quickly I can get through this next part here, but lastly, we have the Washington Post here. This final headline of this whole little rant that bravely, and I do say bravely, published the following article. It's Washington Post. If the Washington Post is actually risking the very public backlash it will receive from this kind of headline, especially right now, then maybe it's worth paying attention to. That's what I thought going into this. Here's the headline. Democrats' postal conspiracy is the biggest made-up controversy since Russiagate. Washington Post, man. I mean, this Bezos, folks. I don't know what to do with this.
Well, they're anti. They Washington Post wants USPS to get rid of those boxes,
right,
because they work for Amazon. They're like, down with USPS. They don't need more funding. This is where Democrats' special interests come to head right here, and I think that's the only reason they're writing a negative article.
Well,
they stand to benefit. This
is what Washington Post said about it. They said, the very last paragraph said, the narrative that Trump is manipulating the post office to steal the election is the new Russiagate. With that, I agree with that. A conspiracy theory designed to delegitimize Trump's victory if he wins. Trump should act now to take that narrative away. Now, the acting now is a very interesting part. Let me just get through a couple of these things. They start this whole article by saying, I'm sure that you've heard that the exact same talking point as well, is that Fauci has said there's no reason why most Americans can't vote. I think his exact quote was something to the effect of, if you can go wear a mask, if you can, physically distance in a crowded situation, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. A lot of other folks have been reading on Facebook are saying, if you can show up to Walmart and purchase your goods every single day, you can probably vote in person.
Golly, that's what I say to anybody who talks to me about mail-in voting. I'm like, well, Anthony Fauci said it's okay, and I defer to the experts. Don't you like science? I thought you liked science. I thought you were like a science guy.
Well, this is where I think Washington Post starts to make some of the best arguments I've heard so far. So we've dealt with what's currently going on, the narrative that the pieces of machinery are being destroyed, the boxes are being destroyed. We've dealt with that. We've dealt with what's happened in the past, that this has just been an ongoing problem for the service of the United States Postal Service because they're a failing service. Now we're dealing with some other situations right now. I mean, some other narratives here. So Washington Post says, a massive increase in mail-in ballots will throw the election into chaos, not because Trump is manipulating the postal system, but because mail-in ballots are the most inherently unreliable way to vote. Vote by mail has a much higher failure rate than in-person voting, a fact that underscores the catastrophic failure of mail-in voting during Democrat primaries this year. I almost 100% agree with the entirety of the last two sentences. You're talking 46 additional states trying to do a mass amount of mail-in voting that they have never done before. They are ill-equipped to try and do anything with right now. And that was all just proven to us undeniably, empirically proven to everybody just during the Democrat primary process. Now, those failures had nothing to do with Trump or the U.S. Postal Service. The problem is state election laws that allow voters to request mail-in ballots just a few days before the election. If tens of millions of voters think about it this way. This is perfect. If tens of millions of voters all drop ballots in the mail at the last minute, it is inevitable that the postal system will be overwhelmed and millions of ballots will be delayed, misdirected, or arrived without postmark. This is why the Postal Service General Counsel, Thomas Marshall, recently warned state election officials, urging them to require voters to request ballots at least 15 days before the election. There's a final piece to that whole Twitter rant that we started with. My purpose for this research was trying to figure out if each one of those pieces in that Twitter rant was accurate. This is the final piece that I couldn't figure out what happened right there. The piece where he said, and, USPS has already been warning people that, there's going to be delays in happening. Well, the delays came because apparently the lead counsel for USPS, for the Postal Service General Counsel, said it's your state laws that are messing everything up. If you allow these people to request a couple days before, can y'all handle that? You tell me. Is your system not going to go? Is your system properly equipped right now to handle that type of influx? Of course not. So his suggestion was, if you don't want to be delayed, require a request
15 days at a minimum prior to the election. That was the actual statement, apparently. But instead of pushing states to fix their election laws, Democrats are trying to pin the blame on Trump, arguing that he's pushing to defund the Postal Service. And apparently the Washington Post says that's also a lie. Just last month, Trump administration gave the USPS an extra $10 billion in the CARES Act. Trump has since signed off on legislation that would turn it into a grant instead of just a loan. Postal Service was a mess long before Trump arrived, losing $78 billion. $78 billion the USPS has lost since 2007, but it has plenty of short-term cash. Despite this, Pelosi is demanding that Trump agrees to a $25 billion USPS bailout that would undoubtedly be loaded up with partisan provisions regarding mail-in voting and threatening to blame Trump for the coming mail-in fiasco. Democrats are also charging that cost-saving reforms instituted by the Postmaster General, this guy that we just talked about, were politically motivated. Washington Post says that's also untrue. His name is DeJoy. Is a Trump donor. Yes, that's true. He was appointed not by Trump, but he was approved by the unanimous vote of a bipartisan Postal Service Board of Governors. And the reforms he's trying to implement were designed to address issues raised by a recent report by USPS Inspector General Tammy Whitcomb, a career civil servant who joined the Inspector General's office during the Obama administration. All of these cuts apparently are necessary to the USPS path to solvency. So this is where he finally gets it, whoever this article's author is, where he finally gets to all this stuff. We've been ping, nailing off little narratives. He says, so what should Trump do? Now, this is, I don't know if I agree with him on this one, but it's at least interesting to consider as we finalize the show. I'm going to hit some Facebook comments and then whatever else. He says, so what should Trump do? Simple. Take away the Democrats' excuses and make them own the coming mail-in fiasco. The president should ask Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to pass bipartisan legislation introduced in July. This is important. Introduced in July by Senator Susan Collins, who is a Republican out of Maine. She's got an R in front of her name for sure, and Dianne Feinstein from California, to give the Postal Service $25 billion to cover pandemic revenue losses and attach a continuing resolution funding the government until after the election, heading off a financial crisis when the government funds run out on October 1st. He says, the author says, this would put Democrats in a bind if they refuse to approve a bipartisan bill, one co-sponsored by Senator Kamala Harris, their vice presidential nominee right now. At the funding level, they have requested, then they can't blame Trump for defunding the post office right before the election or any government shutdown. If they approve the bill, they help Republicans keep control of the Senate by giving vulnerable Collins a pre-election boost and lose their ability to blame Trump for the impending mail-in voting fiasco, catastrophe, whatever. Either way, this author says Trump wins. Now, I don't necessarily know about that analysis. I think there might be some other ulterior motives attached to that. But let me kick it to Shine. See what all y'all feel. Let me kick it to Facebook one last time, whoever's still watching after this long rant that we just went through. I just want to know. I think I've backtracked to my opinion a little bit. I want to know where y'all come from. Is any of this stuff convincing to you? Are y'all still on the side that I was initially, saying that, the Trump administration is actively trying to do things to influence the election? And again, one final time, man, I'm not saying that any of this absolves him from trying to play the political game. Trump does it better than anybody else, and he does it just up until the legal borderline. I get that. I know that. But that is politics.
Well, not on this front. What bill is on his desk? Right. What bill is on his desk? When Democrats say he's trying to defund the post office, what bill has passed through both houses and both chambers that he's not signing? That's first bit of analysis right there. Right. First bit is what is on the table for him to sign to fund the post office? Nothing. Not a damn thing. Senate and House have not agreed on any new funding expenditures for anything, whether it be bailouts, post office, personal checks sent to everybody. They're still working that out, and they may not work it out because we have to fund the government coming up here in a month or so. So these extra expenditures may not happen. So that's first bit of analysis. There's nothing for him to sign. Second bit of analysis. Everything they're complaining about has been ongoing, and all the directives for everything that's being done in the post office was done before the pandemic started. If you know anything about government contracts, they do them every 4 years. because once they find someone they like, they commit to paying them. They get all the paperwork signed. They don't like having to re-up that every year. So anybody who's doing anything for the post office that isn't actually the post office, like that company you talked about, the Hartford people, they've had their contract for years. For years. Has nothing to do with the pandemic or mail-in voting or any of that stuff. Almost every single thing that you've seen about them either changing routes, moving boxes, was a decision made before the pandemic. In fact, it was probably decisions made before Trump became president, to be perfectly honest with you, because that's how the post office works. They make long-term plans. As Mr. Henry said, you got people that are still in the board of governors now that were put on during the Obama administration. They do long plans. It's not like the post office changes every 4 years. It's too much money. It's too big. Third bit of analysis. The HEALS Act looked like we were going to have some kind of compromise on that 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we were going to get state bailouts. We were going to get another round of the $1,200 checks. All kinds of different things. Money for the election. Blah, 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 blah. But they couldn't agree on it. Trump did what this author is saying by cutting the legs out by doing the executive order that said payroll tax cut, student loan defer payments, and and then I think there was some money thrown out there for people too. I can't remember everything from that executive order. The payroll tax cut is what sticks out in my mind because it was the only thing that affected me in that whole thing. Right. But so that ended debate, but now they've brought up the post office, brings the debate back up of maybe we should pass this HEALS Act. I think this is a last-ditch effort. It's not. I think the getting people to doubt the election is a secondary goal. I think primary goal is getting these state bailouts back up on the voting
Which
arena.
is like under the guise of saving USPS and thereby the election. Okay,
yes,
I hear you.
I really do,
Yeah.
because I think that these states like New York, California, Illinois, Washington, they're struggling. They're struggling real hard.
Oh yeah,
Real hard. I mean, like, start counting how many times you hear Gavin Newsom say they don't have money for stuff. He says in almost every speech, he's like, we don't have the money for this, we don't have the money for that. De Blasio saying the same thing about New York, and Cuomo saying the same thing about New York. I think this was an attempt to get the states the bailouts. Personally, or like this is special interest trying to get all the things from the HEALS Act by creating this narrative about the post office. And I only say that because the things they're throwing out, these people are too smart to be that ignorant. They're just lying. They know everything that's going on at the post office.
that's true. That's true.
They know that these things that judges have done, it hasn't even been legislators, judges have been deciding that states need to have universal mail-in. They know there hasn't been any work done to make sure on the legislative side, their people haven't done the work in states on the legislative side to get this mail-in voting done. They know the post office has been trying to remove services for 15 years, 10 years. They know all this. So they're liars, which means the stated purpose of what they're doing is not it. And that's what makes me think it could be either the state bailouts or any of the number of special interests that are being addressed in the HEALS Act. And getting the HEALS Act back on the table to be voted on. This is what I'm saying, because like they're saying Donald Trump's trying to defund the post office. There's nothing for him to vote on because Senate hasn't passed the HEALS Act. So I think this comes down to pressuring the upper chamber and saying, you know, senators, we're going to come after you, and saying, like, you didn't fund the post office, therefore you're in league with Trump, you're trying to steal the election, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's all in an effort by special interest to get the things they want, to get the money they want. That's my opinion. It's a little conspiratorial. But when you have proven liars, you can't take what they say on face value, and then you're forced to speculate because you know they're lying. They are lying. They know about the post office. They know about it. They know all this stuff. So, like, and I always say, don't attribute stupidity where there could be malice. A lot of people say it backwards. Don't attribute malice when it could be stupidity. But when it comes to these Democrats in federal offices, I just can't assume stupidity. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it serves the American people to assume that these people are stupid.
I agree. I
think it's malice. I think it's lies. Now, Trump may be trying to take advantage in any place he can, but it's because he's dealing with liars. So he may be egging them on, but like, there's nothing he has personally done that could affect the election. It's more what Congress has done over the past 25 years that could affect the election, because judges are demanding states who do not have statutory regulations for universal mail-in ballots. They're making them do it. You get what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. So yeah, he may be egging them on a little bit, but Congress is the reason the USPS isn't going to be. Our culture is the reason USPS isn't going to be able to handle the election.
Yeah, that's true.
They're Blockbuster in a Netflix world. I can send a letter. I do it to Grant all the time, right here, really easily. Within like 30 seconds, I can send Grant a letter. I don't have to go to the post office. I don't have to buy a stamp. But that's all my analysis on it. It's just a bunch of liars doing lying things, and I think it's for special interest. Because why not? That seems to be the reason Washington D.C. does everything.
And Kelly said in Facebook exactly 100 to Sean's what he was just saying a second ago there. Jonathan just said, and they have to be in session to fight. Peter said a second ago, get ready to fight. Jonathan responded by saying they have to be in session to fight, which Nancy Pelosi is trying to call everyone back for session right now. But I think she may run into a McConnell-related problem if the Senate doesn't do anything to help her out on that one, right? Michael just said in Facebook, let's see, here's something to look at. Try to send in Facebook Messenger on the Facebook website, Brighton.com. I don't even know what that is. Brighton.com, and see what happens. That's an interesting experiment, I suppose. And look, I think we've proved the point here today by going over the most of this stuff. And I appreciate the Real News audience sitting with us, for the majority of the time that we just ran through some of this stuff. More than anything, if I'm being totally honest, more than anything, this was just a sounding board for me to get some stuff off my chest and to express, and really just to sort of audibly hear myself across the reverberation of this wall articulate an argument that I'm hoping is accurate. And I'm hoping everyone else saw the accuracy in the same way that I did as well. We went through every single piece of narrative that's been constructed and presented so far. All the stuff that said, hey, there's nefarious motivation at play. We then checked a PolitiFact article that said, oh, dude, they're not destroying boxes. Now they're not destroying boxes. We heard from the UPS directly from an audit released in 2016, September 2016, that said this stuff has been happening for years and years and years prior to the Trump administration even being inaugurated. And then we finalized in a Washington Post article saying, okay, so everything from the narrative that you've heard presented so far to all the stuff that you haven't even heard brought up yet, this narrative just doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't hold a lot of substance. So I think Sean's correct. It obviously has something else to do with other than just the mail-in process itself. Hey, a little bit late this morning, 10:07. I appreciate all y'all for sticking around with us. We love each and every one of you sincerely. We will be back tomorrow doing it big for episode 100. See y'all tomorrow. Love y'all.